Hey guys, and welcome to first video of this chapter. In this chapter we are trying to texture this asset. I already made the assets and the only thing we need to do is make some textures. But before that we need to know how to import our model and start new project. Simply hit a Control N or go to File and click on New, and a window will be open, and this is called New Project. First, we need to set up a template. This is not that important, and you can change the setting of this PBR metric roughness default, but you can create your own template, and I'm going to discuss this thing or making custom templates in chapter maybe 4. So for now, leave that as it is. After that, we have a select button. Select that and go to your model directory. I have few models here, but they are the same but different UV and high poly, low poly subdivision. So I have font UV 0 to 1 low poly, 0 to 1 high poly, and font UDIM high poly and low poly. For now, I'm going to use UV 0 to 1 low poly. Click Open. And after that, we have some project setting, document resolution. I'm going to use 2048 for now. Normal map format. You can use, or we can choose between DirectX and OpenGL, and this depends on your project and final software, I guess. If your software using OpenGL or DirectX, you can choose between them, but always remember, you can always invert the green value for the normal and invert the normal value. I used to OpenGL, so I'm going to choose OpenGL and compute tangent speed per fragment if you're using maybe Sino 4D or Unity, and check this checklist, and we have UDIM tiles setting. We don't have UDIM tiles or multiple UV tiles for this model UV 0 to 1, so leave that unchecked. We don't have any camera, so it's not important if these are checked or not, so leave that as B. So after that, we have auto unwrap. We already have UV, but let's see the options. If you have multiple polygroup or multiple material assigned to your model, Substance Painter is going to look at the materials and automatically cut the seams and assign them to different layers. We're going to test this option in the next chapter. So you can import your baked map, but we don't have any pre-baked maps, so we don't need this one. And also color management, the new option that added to the Substance 3D Painter. In this project we are going to use Legacy, but in chapter 4 I'm going to start the project with Open Color IO and maybe ACES. For now, let's leave that on Legacy. And we are good to go. Hit OK. And our model has been loaded inside our scene. Good. Now, if you look at the texture set list, we have quite a few materials assigned to different parts. And Substance Painter, remember, Substance Painter is going to layer the model inside texture set list and list them based on the materials. You can double click and change the material name, or maybe reassign or import shader parameters up here, but in this project we don't need to use this one. So we are ready to start, but if I maybe, for example, drag and drop one of these smart materials, maybe this rotary, I know this is one smart material and it contains some maybe scratches or masks or grunges. It's going to show on the surface of model based on some data, but it's not showing now. We need to have some mesh data to drive smart materials or even smart masks or simple masks. So let's see what we need. We need to have mesh maps. In texture set setting, if you scroll down, you see bake mesh maps. If you click on this button, a window going to pop up and you see some parameters. Let's test these parameters on this rotary dial first. We have output resolution. This is different than this layer texture output setting that we set, 2048. This is just for mesh maps. So let's select 2048 and hit apply diffusion to fill the gaps between UV shells. We need some high poly mesh to bake the details from to this low poly mesh. We don't have that kind of data on our high poly mesh, so we have two options. Check this checklist to use low poly mesh as high poly mesh, or load our high poly mesh. I'm going to load high poly mesh. We don't need to use cage. The cage is going to tell Substance Painter to add a rear or frontal distance for projection, but we have these options down here. If I enable the cage, this is going to gray out. I'm going to use max frontal and max rear distance for projection to project high poly data. But let's tie this by adding a 0. I find this setting quite effective. Just leave the relative to bounding box, average normal, and ignore backface checked. After that, we have anti-aliasing. If you are setting this drop down to none, it's going to leave some jagginess around the edges. Let's set that to 2x2 for now to smooth the edges. Match, we don't need to use match, but if you have some quite a few parts and you need to project them individually, you can add low or high or whatever name you need to the end of the low poly and high poly mesh, and set this one to by mesh name. Source Painter is going to look at the each parts and compare to the name convention and bake them individually. So leave that on always, and that's it for common settings. We have some buttons up down here: cancel, save setting, bake, rotary dial, the material that I'm selecting right now, or bake all the materials. Let's bake rotary dial for now. And also we are baking normal, world space normal, ID, ambient occlusion, curvature, position, and thickness. Let's hit bake. And as you can see, Source Painter is going to bake all of the passes one by one. Alright, almost done. Okay, and as you can see, after baking, now we can see the smart material effect. Why? Because inside this mask here, we have mask generators or mask editor that is going to look at our world space normal baked, position baked, thickness, curvature, and ambient occlusion. The baked maps are going to sit automatically inside these input boxes. You can change them, but that's not a good idea. So if I go to mask editor and change some of the mask parameters, you can see the mask affecting. We have some controls over the passes, ambient occlusion, for example. If I invert that, this mask, it's not going to use occlusion, it's using curvature. So open the curvature and play with the curvature settings or curvature overall. Invert that and you have some dirt, dust, scratch, or whatever you want. But without mesh map, you can't have this kind of effects automatically added to your materials. Let's try another material. Go to Assets, smart materials, and let's find maybe something like this one. Drag and drop it, and it's going to leave some scratches. Open the smart material and disable the layers one by one, and now we're left with the base metal. Now let's activate occlusion dirt. It's going to look at our occlusion. If you wanted to see the mask isolated, hold Alt and click on the thumbnail, select the dirt and play with the dirt level. Alright, and let's enable the rust. Rust is going to look at curvature, ambient occlusion, and position to drive the rust on our model. And after that, paint, another rust, and rust occlusion. And after that, a little bit of sharpen. Let's disable these layers and maybe leave the rust. For now, rust is driving by position, occlusion, and curvature, and the position is overall the whole rotary dial. Let's see if I open this drop down and go all the way down under mesh maps and select position. The position is overall. Let's open up the Bake mesh maps again and go to position pass. This is set to full scene or B-box or B-sphere. Let's set that per material and let's disable all, just position, bake, and it's going to be different. Now we can see we have some buttons visible. Let's hit M to go back to material mode, and now you can control the rust based on position, the buttons, and the surface of the rotary dial with more precise control. It's not going to be overall. So let's go back to, let's delete this one and go back to Bake Mesh Map. Select all mesh maps and go to normal. Normal, it doesn't have any parameters. So same as the border space normal. The border space normal is going to show the Substance Painter location of our model. Next we have ID. The ID map is good for masking different parts of the model. So it is good to bake ID map. You can bake based on vertex color, material color, file ID, or mesh ID. I have mesh ID or material ID, so let's select mesh ID. If your model it's exported out of ZBrush and you have some polygroup, and you can select this one as well. And color generator, you can set that on random, U-shift, or grayscale. I'm gonna leave that on hue shift. And don't forget to apply to all, because we are editing the rotary dial only. Apply to all. Next, we have ambient occlusion. These have some settings that I'm not going to change because I'm happy with the settings, but you have two more important options. One of them is to say Substance Painter to bake linear or smooth. If smooth selects, the ambient occlusion is going to be smoother than linear. And also you have by mesh name here as well. After that, curvature. And you don't need to change anything. Just method if you want. Generate from mesh or generate from normal map. If normal map selected, the curvature baker is going to look at your data in normal map. So generate from mesh then. Position per material or per scene. The only option you need to change is this one. And thickness. Thickness is going to tell Substance Painter how thick are the part of the model or how thin. So it's going to use on subsurface scattering or fake subsurface scattering or SSS. So I'm going to bake that anyway. We don't need this in this project, but we might use some thickness as mask. So let's see. Apply to all. Double check. And yep, we are good to go. So let's hit bake, but it's going to take a while, so let's drop the resolution to 512 and bake selected. And same as before, it's going to bake all of the mesh maps one by one. Can cancel if you have some, or you spot some errors. So now we are having some mesh maps. You can hit a B on your keyboard to go to mesh maps, B and B again, and cycle through. Position and thickness normal, border space normal, and ID map. Also ambient occlusion. Let's see position again. Open up the bake mesh maps one more time. Deselect all mesh maps and select position only. We baked on per material, and as you can see, Substance Painter is going to generate our masks or effects in y-axis 0 here to 1 based on parts. If I set that to full scene and apply to all, bake all, as you can see now we have 0 to 1 in whole mesh. And now our effects going to add it from here to here and it's not going to affect individually to the each parts. So it's always good to set position to per material, but based on your projects. All right. Now let's hit M in keyboard and maybe drop some material, smart material, into the scene or in canvas and on the surface of the model. And it's going to react to the where is it? Curvature, yep, curvature, vortex with normal and position, or thickness, position, gradient, and all the baked mesh maps. Let me see if I have another material. Yep. And yeah, whatever material I throw at this, it's going to make the effects based on mesh maps that we baked. Right, let's delete these materials. And yep, they are deleted. All right, now we are good to go. But I'm going to bake mesh maps in 248, all meshes and all channels, and with same setting, maybe anti-aliasing 4x4. And I'm going to see you in the next part.